Good evening. Going to read now from the first book of Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. This is the Loeb Classics translation. Every art and every investigation, and likewise every practical pursuit or undertaking, seems to aim at some good. Agathou, to agathon. Hence it has been well said that the good is that at which all things aim. The good now to agathon, so a reference to Plato. It is true that a certain variety is to be observed among the ends at which the arts and sciences aim. In some cases, the activity of practicing the art is itself the end, whereas in others, the end is some product over and above the mere exercise of the art. And in the arts, whose ends are certain things beside the practice of the arts themselves, these products are essentially superior in value to the activities. Now, already here, in only a few lines at the very beginning of the Nicomachean Ethics, we have some crucial distinctions and also questions that Aristotle poses for the entire project, the so called Nicomachean Ethics, which may have been written either for his father or for his son, or dedicated to, or maybe edited by his son, who were both called Nicomachos. So, um, what we have here now is a reference, of course, to the good, and also to perhaps a bit later on to the good life, to eudaimonia or daimonia, the well-spiritedness, well-roundedness, all things that we will discuss at the course on Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, the syllabus for which you can download by following the link in the description of this video. I would also recommend, if you're joining on Twitter, to come over to my YouTube channel. Twitter does not allow for the live chat, so I won't be able to see if you message me there. So, what we have here now is the good as a telos, and uh, the question that Aristotle poses right in the beginning does not make it seem very much as though this were a virtue ethics, but more teleological ethics. But what the exact differences are and how to address Aristotle this text specifically is what we will discuss at the course in great detail. I don't think that the Procrustes bed of pushing Aristotle into virtue as ethics, especially in the contemporary sense, helps us very much. If I can just perhaps tell you a brief anecdote, when I learned ancient Greek at school a few decades ago, there were a couple of words that we were not really supposed to translate. And one of them was arete. Arete is the word that's usually translated as virtue, and there are ways of translating it, but it is a bit more complicated than just saying a virtue. There's something lost in arete, because arete has to do with the full-on flourishing, the activity of coming to be human in the enactment only for that sake of itself uh, in as a, let's just say, rational being. So the distinction that Aristotle draws here right at the beginning of what I just read is a distinction between we could say activity and production. And um, to use the standard or action and production English translations, and to say the obvious, a product is where a production is where you do something for the sake of something other. You make a table, for example, and activity for Aristotle is, properly speaking, that which is done for itself, and the enactment for itself. It gets a bit more complicated because Aristotle does not also draws a distinction between theoria and praxis, theory and praxis, and he does not really allow, it seems, in Book 10 uh, for the theoretical virtues, I'll just say for now, to really have any ethical consequence. But I think there's a way of reading this book where we can try and find a way in which Aristotle does bring it all together. So, what I want to do tonight is briefly introduce the course and also tell you a bit about how we're going to go about it. I perhaps I can show you the inside of the course. It's not officially open for enrollment yet, so if you want, you can just download the syllabus and take your time deciding whether you'd like to join or not. The course officially begins um, on the 12th of October, which is a Saturday. We're going to meet 10 times in total. The first lecture actually will be on Aristotle, but it will be specifically, I can show you, it will be on Greek thinking or maybe Aristotelian thinking by fundamental concepts. So we're going to look at some of the most important Aristotelian concepts, for example, the word psyche or psyche, soul, which is to some degree related to Plato's understanding of the soul, but then not as metaphysical as Plato. There's no immortal soul in Aristotle. The soul for Aristotle is a principle of life or of vitality. When you die, your soul dies with you. But as you have a soul, so also a plant has a soul, for example, I should point out. So but we could also say that the soul is the form. And I should say this again to anyone who is joining here from on Twitter. It might be a good idea to come over to YouTube. There will be I will be able to respond to your questions. I don't think I can see if you leave a comment. So this is the inside of the course. If should you decide to enroll at the future point when we open enrollment, so we're going to look at the good. Maybe I'll just show you the lectures. I went to Athens for this. You can see the Acropolis there behind me, and so I recorded all of the lectures in either in my apartment there or around Athens, for example. This one here was recorded in the ancient agora of Athens. So this is the one on friendship. If you So the lectures are not that long; they're more or less just guidance. I'm focusing in the lectures quite a bit on the distinction between theoria and praxis. I also focus on the importance of scolaire, uh, which we could translate as leisure. And but I would say, because one of the questions that we often get is, who is this course for? I would say, if you're interested in Aristotle, obviously Greek philosophy, it's fundamental. If you're overall interested in Western philosophy, Occidental thought, then you must have read the Nicomachean ethics. But if you're interested in ethics more broadly speaking, maybe you're a hardcore utilitarian, Vaderidro Satane. But according to, for Aristotle, for example, utilitarianism would not be ethics because it's concerned with production. It's producing an outcome, the highest quantifiable happiness for the greatest amount of people. That's a product. That's not acting for the sake of the activity itself. So, but if you have an interest in deontology or teleological ethics, or of course virtue ethics more broadly speaking, then this might also be an interesting course for you, even if maybe the first, if you're not all too interested in Aristotle, which would be a shame because Aristotle, it's often said that Socrates brought down philosophy from the stars to the city, and it is true perhaps that Plato would have been even more metaphysical if it hadn't been for his teacher Socrates. But Aristotle really does ground Plato and the excesses of Platonism. in the question for activity and also production and conviviality, which is more the question of Aristotle perhaps than of uh, of uh, of Plato, because Aristotle, also just to put it simply, does not require the metaphysics of a tripartite soul, the highest part of which logistikon must be immortal for the sake of the order of the polis to be upheld. And then the ethics in Aristotle specifically is, however, concerned with politics. So if you're interested in Aristotle's politics, you should have read the Nicomachean Ethics first, which leads to the politics. And as Aristotle also says in the beginning, we've done the groundwork to summarize, and now we can move on to political life. Now, if the teacher of Alexander the Great, if he was good enough for Alexander the Great, he should be good enough also for us. We will discuss also some of the what's now perhaps referred to as Aristotelian metaphysics. So we will discuss the four causes as well as dynamis and energeia, potentiality and actuality. Um, and so we will also look to other texts, but the main focus is on, or will be on, the ethics. And as I mentioned, enrollment is not officially open yet, so take your time. If you'd like to join us, the first seminar is in 2 months from now. On the 12th of October, we're going to meet for 10 weeks. Final seminar will be the 14th of December. And we're going to begin this time with a lecture on just opening up the Greek Aristotelian way of thinking through fundamental Greek concepts. So if you don't know any Greek, that's fine. I will be uh, using the Latin alphabet for the most part, so you should be able to read it. But you will go away from this course understanding at least, or being able to not read ancient Greek, but being able to you know, um, understand some of the fundamental concepts. So we're going to look at the etymology, how Aristotle uses them, and what they mean in the broader Aristotelian Greek context. Also, for example, Psyche already gave that example. We will also look at the word scolaire. Scolaire is usually translated as leisure. That's a good enough translation, but it obscures quite a bit the origin of the word, which is from the verb echein, which means to have and to hold. So we're going to look at all of this as well. How scolaire is finding a stance or a ground to stand on, um, and rather than perhaps just thinking of it as leisure. Now, if you we, we will discuss, of course, also the so-called virtues that Aristotle discusses, but I would warn against just reading this text as well as a guidebook of providing you with intellectual and perhaps more interpersonal virtues by which to live your life. Now, this is not entirely what the book really is. It can guide one to the good life, but the question is a deeper one, which is, what does it mean to be human, and how can we enact our being human? And maybe I should also point out that if you hear people say, or see someone speaking of applying Aristotelian virtues to one's life, etc., that this perhaps um, rather turns the so-called virtues, if we want to use that translation, into products, something that can be used for the sake of something other, and that lacks this innerness, or this inner interwovenness that is so present in the word arete, which we will come to think of in the course as a joining together. And only then I think we can also begin to make sense of the different aretai, but also of the importance of the telos in Aristotle. So we won't place Aristotle into a progressive bed of either of virtue ethics, properly understood as it is today, and but rather read the text on its own and try and understand it on its own without coming to it with too much of a framework that can ultimately perhaps be helpful, but also be a little bit confusing sometimes if something that doesn't fully fit in to what one has what one has established as a framework. So I would invite you all, if you have any questions, by the way, and you're on YouTube, then you should leave a comment now in the chat and I'll respond. Let me just perhaps show you also briefly here. No, this is the website. If you go to our website, you'll find here the download uh, the download mask. So you can go here, enter your first name and your email address, hit download, wait for a couple of seconds, and you will be redirected to a PDF of the um, syllabus. And if you give us your correct email address, then we should be able to reach out to you in about a month from now when we open early enrollment. We've had about, I think, 50 people on the list so far, which is quite astonishing given that I haven't really published about this course yet. But uh, there is obviously a great interest in Aristotle, and maybe this is also how you'd like to spend the final 3 months of the year. At the final session, as always, the 10th seminar is the conference or symposium where participants of the course where you may present your own work, should be loosely based on Aristotle and what we discuss here. But if it takes you in a very different direction, then you um, then you are welcome to do that as well, of course. So, well, here's a question by The Void itself. What is virtue? Well, you should have to sign up and read Aristotle. And at the end of it, we won't even ask that question anymore because you will see that the translation virtue, which comes from the Latin word vis, which means strength and force, is extremely misguided translation for the word arete. And so what I'm trying to do with this course is not only open up this text to you, but also a Greek way of thinking, a Greek manner of thinking that allows you to understand the fundamental original concepts and also begin to think differently. This is what philosophy should do. If you're only looking for informational value, then you've come to the very, very wrong place. Our courses are not for you. Then you should be content with reading Wikipedia entries or I don't know, do something else. So the again, I'll say this now because now more people are here. By the way, if you know anyone interested in Aristotle, do share this video with them right now or afterwards, whenever you see it. Maybe also share the link here to the syllabus so that your friends are made familiar with Halcyon if they are not yet, and maybe you aren't yet. Maybe you're new here and you've never taken a course with us. You're most welcome to join us. You can find many so-called pro seminars and conference videos of past um, groups of students of different courses, so you can familiarize yourself with what it might be like. The seminars are really there for you. There will be guided reading, and you may ask me questions, but we will also have you in smaller groups a couple of times throughout the 2 hours. So there's enough time for you to get to know the others. Uh, this is a good question, also from the void itself. Do I need to know ancient Greek to understand Aristotle? Well, to a full extent, if you yes, and that is the case for anything. If you want to understand physics, you will have to understand the theories that underline it. It's not enough just to read about it. You will have to understand also the mathematics that underlie the specific physical theory that you're interested in. Um, but if you don't know any ancient Greek, as I said in the beginning, if you come to this course, we will go about this by considering the original Greek words first. So uh, it is we're going to go about this by opening up the text itself, by opening up the words themselves. We won't be reading, we won't be translating from the ancient Greek, so we won't be going through this. But I will, from time to time, of course, look at the Greek. I've got the Greek here. I have different translations also. Um, so you will go away from this course, whether you take it as self-study or in the seminars, understanding, having a feeling for the Greek language, and hence also for Greek thinking a bit more. So we won't just uh, again use already well-established translations for everything, just so that we didn't have a concept under which we can imagine something immediately. I think that that's to the detriment of philosophy, of thinking, and quite harmful, especially in the so-called information age that predicates itself on speed and acceleration, and acceleration of translation, in which meaning and significance go completely lost. So we will be reading this in the spirit of scolaire, that is the spirit of, we could say, the ordinary translation, leisure, but also sufficiency, slowness, and uh, uh, hence a ground on which to stand and die. So, if you have any more questions, please let me know now, because I will be disappearing into the night very soon. If you would like, you may download the syllabus now, and please also share this link with others. Uh, oh, there's someone saying that, oh, you're going to Athens. That's wonderful. Def null. Maybe you can join us as well, as we're reading this in the fall. I will be in Athens as well with the group for 4 days, sometime in October. Um, okay, so specific questions on the book. I mean, there are reasons why certain books are not mentioned in the course, but this is something that we will discuss once we are there. Um, the Again, this course is concerned for the most part with the question of the distinction between theoria and praxis, as well as action and production, as well as uh, the importance of scolaire and the enactment. So we're not going to go over every single virtue and all the moral virtues, etc. That's not the point of this course. That's something that can be done on its own, but the gist of the text is somewhere else. Yeah. And this is where perhaps then some might not want to join. That's fine. But we want to get to the heart of this text, which is that Aristotle introduces here, for the trajectory of European Occidental thinking, the distinction between theory and praxis. One which has to do with human freedom, etc. One which is perhaps not unsolvable, but uh, certainly, let's just say, presents problems. And I should perhaps not put it like that, but which puts us on a trajectory that we are still on. And that is the focus of the course, plus, in addition, of course, to the opening up of the text by the Greek itself and by fundamental Greek terms, so that rather than plowing through all the different virtues, yeah, you can read this section or this book afterwards on your own, but read it differently than you might have without any grasp or sense for the Greek. Good question. So let me know if there are any more. If not, any more questions, I mean. If there aren't any, then I shall retire very soon, and we will be in touch. You'll get an email once we open enrollment, which will be in a month from now or so. Interest has been very high. We limit the seminars at about 35 people or so, depending. That's usually a good number for these bigger courses. And okay, I don't think there are any more questions for now. Excellent. So, again, thank you very much for listening. Do share this video with others and share the link as well if you have a friend who is interested in Greek philosophy, in ethics, in Aristotle, in Plato. Maybe your friend is a hardcore Platonist and needs a good um, needs to come down and be grounded again. But as you can see, Aristotle on some way wants to ground the good in oidaimonia, but at the same time introduces this radical distinction between theoria and praxis, which has left scholars and thinkers wondering what, but not just for the sake of Aristotle, but has, and Michael, you will know this because you were at the Kant course. What is the relationship between pure reason and practical reason? That is a continuation of this issue, yeah. And what we could translate this perhaps also differently. What is the connection between the relationship between the vita contemplativa and the vita activa? Can there be a harmonization between the two? So, but having said all of this, especially the seminars, if it comes, if it's very clear that the group overall, no matter what I've written in the lectures and what I'm presenting, if the group overall, of course, wants to look at book 4, we will make time for it, or any other sections that won't be covered in great detail. That's, of course, very possible. So that's why the seminars are great. If you want to discuss something that perhaps isn't addressed in the lectures, then that's where we go in the seminar discussions. But overall, even if you don't take the seminars and you're reading the rest of the book on your own, I think it will open up to you in a different manner than perhaps if we, because there's this tendency to simply read these texts as if either it's already clear, we can just apply all of our notions to Aristotle, or yeah. So I'll leave it at that for now. So I would uh, invite you to start reading the text now, just to see in your mother tongue. I would recommend, if your mother tongue is French, then read it in French. If it's Italian, read it in Italian. If English, then English. If German, then German, etc., etc. But so you get a feeling for the work, for the book, and if you think that this is something you'd like to devote some time, which, if you are sincere about your studies of philosophy, then that is absolutely fundamental. Then I do hope to see you all in October, when we begin our investigation, our reading of the Nicomachean Ethics, and especially Book 10, which is the final lecture, will be of interest to us, given the crucial distinction between theory and praxis. So, again, thank you very much indeed for listening.